Fancy meeting you here.
Oh, wait, yeah, you are in the frickin' wilderness.
He's like Daniel Boone out there.
I want to be a werewolf.
To me, too.
Anywho, tell me about Coplin.
Okay.
I be smart too. Oh, couple of dummies I've got here. Welcome back, everybody, to the Jack of the Shadows podcast. This is Erik Van Conant, along with the other VC boys.
Hello, this is Dave.
Hello, this is Adam.
And this is our fourth installment now. We are covering chapters 19 through 24. So this week we are going to do a view from Dragonmount, a quick summation of the plot lines for the week. Then we're going to head into who wore it best, followed by our most interesting moments, the view from Dragonmount. We'll cover In Dreams, Tolkien in the Boys' Room, our Coplin of the week, and we'll wrap up with Who Leveled Up. Let's head on into our view from Dragonmount. This week we started with Chapter 19 and the entry into Shadar Logoth, and ended with Chapter 24, where Matt is acting weirdly covetous on the spray. It takes place over 4 or 5 days. In between, we had an event with Mordeth and Poison Treasure. The group got separated. Rand, Matt, and Tom joined Bael Domon on the spray. Perrin and Egwene meet Elias Machera and head for Camelin. And Moiraine and Lan and Nynaeve pursued the River Arenelle south. So the group breaks up a little bit here. And we're going to talk about these people as separate entities as opposed to a group now, which is a new development. So let's start off with who wore it best. So I've got a description here ripped directly from the pages. It should be a little easier. So here we go. Ready?
Here we go.
Last week.
Tight black breeches and soft red boots with tops turned down at the ankle.
Got it.
A long red vest thickly embroidered with gold and a snowy white shirt.
It's Mordeth.
Yeah, see, I told you it would be easy. Let's move on to our most interesting moments for the week. So what was your most interesting moment this week?
My most interesting moment was Mordeth, because, first of all, it's pretty strange that the Trollocs are really scared to go into
Shadar Logoth.
So that's spooky. So there's a reason for it. And then also, side note, Matt is just real thirsty for treasure. He just really wants to find that treasure.
He really does.
This is absolutely part of the whole Mordeth thing. Like, so he's easily swayed to go find treasure because this character comes out of nowhere. They're in this new city, and then all of a sudden they're getting talked to about, oh, treasure? You want treasure? I'll go find some treasure for you.
You have to wonder. Like, you have to wonder how long Mordeth was there listening to their conversation.
Right, exactly.
Sitting in the shadows.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like he hears everything. It's so weird. Also, what is weird to me is that, I guess they weren't around long enough, but maybe Moiraine should have off the bat just been like, oh, by the way, there might be one of the creepiest, most evil characters of all time.
Well, she did.
Just hanging out.
She has warned them that the place is completely corrupted.
Right.
I mean, she did.
Sure.
She did.
It's picking at.
And she makes the point when they come back, to her that, by the way, I told you that even evil won't enter this place. What did you think was in here?
Right. Can't be anything good. I mean, to your point, yes, Adam, it would have been nice if she had been like, well, but then again, she didn't necessarily anticipate, though she should probably have, that these bumpkins were just going to go wander around this town.
Oh,
so she didn't warn him.
That she brings it up, and then it's just great storytelling.
Yeah.
But
that Mordeth,
mostly
man.
it's because Matt's so thirsty for treasure that Rand and Perrin are like, oh my gosh,
and they just go along with it.
It's funny because it's mentioned that Perrin is yawning and his jaws are cracking.
Right.
And then Matt is just talking about treasure. Anyhow, so they go on, they meet this guy, and then he first off the bat says his name. And he's like, I'm Mordeth. And then he pauses a second just expecting to recognize his own name.
Right,
which is really, really crazy.
And then they don't, and he's like, oh, couple of dummies I've got here.
Well, I think it's both. It's both a couple dummies and what? And you don't know who I am? Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt. But mostly a couple of dummies.
Well, right, because, I mean, why would he hope that they knew who he's waiting for somebody that he can manipulate.
Yeah, exactly. We'll
take over. Yeah.
And then they have a conversation, and then he gets really pissed off about them mentioning that they're going to go to Tar Valon.
Yeah.
Well,
There should
yeah.
have been a sign there. Though then again, they all don't really necessarily like the Aes
They have
Sedai
no
either.
idea.
So they could have been like, yeah, dude, me too.
Yeah, but we as readers know, like, that's really odd. And then, he doesn't have a shadow.
Right.
That's the
Slightly,
best.
slightly disarming.
Crazy.
That's the best.
And then also Matt just starts naming names right away.
Because Matt's, yeah.
Like when they get down there, he's just naming off names.
He's like in the
Everything that
bathtub
they
again.
are.
He's just spouting off nonsense.
Well, yeah, that's Matt's job, is to just constantly do things to get them in trouble.
Here I am.
It's like
here
the
I am.
Tolkien
Yeah,
and the
so he
boys where
doesn't
we're
have
going
a
to come to
shadow.
later and
That's
now have another point to bring up
slightly
for that.
alarming. Then he becomes the size of the room. Meanwhile, Matt is clutching some weird dagger he grabbed from the trove.
But we didn't know
And then
that
this
just
guy
yet.
just vanishes off into a tiny crack.
Right.
Then they run outside, and there are watching eyes like everywhere.
Mashadar.
Yeah, Mashadar. And meanwhile, Matt still wants treasure.
Right. Matt still wants the treasure.
yeah. And then they go off and they meet Moiraine, and she goes into the story about it. But this guy just seems super powerful. Like, he can grow to the size of a room. He can disappear like smoke. They go outside, and it seems like they're getting watched everywhere. So they have no idea who this person is. It's really crazy.
And I guess
then
Go ahead.
we find out what the story from Moiraine. So that's my most interesting moment, is that we meet this character face to face.
he definitely gets under your skin.
Yeah, he's so creepy.
A couple of interesting things there. So Rand has another one of these moments where he's staring at something supernatural, trying to figure out what's different about them.
Because he's hyper observant.
Well, either that or he's a little slow, because it takes him a while to realize that the Fade's cloak doesn't move, that the Murdrall's cloak isn't moving in chapter 1. And then he has that aha moment with Mordeth where, it's like, hey, wait a minute. He says it out loud.
Right. His
It's
inner
like
dialogue all of a
It's like
sudden
if you're having dinner with a vampire and you notice that you can't see their shit, you can't
Right.
see their reflection in a
the
mirror.
mirror
You don't
behind him.
say that out loud.
Right.
You slowly sneak out of the room.
and somehow bring the other two with you. Yeah.
Or at least make sure you're by the door when you make the observation, not the thing is standing in front of the door.
It's that Austin Powers moment where his sense of inner
Right.
monologue is not working.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then Mordeth
Blurts it out.
puts his thumb in his mouth and blows himself up like a balloon and fills up the entire other end of the room.
He makes that great statement. He says, like, it's decided, or
Bum, bum,
he says, he stood straighter, seemed taller. It is decided. And then he swells up like the balloon. Yeah.
Right. And then he quickly deflates and goes into a crevice in the wall.
I'm with you, Adam. That guy's hyper powerful and super creepy.
So we learn, we
We
learn
learn more about him after that. So
right.
Well, that
It's
is my
nuts.
question. So Mashadar and Mordeth's the being. Mashadar's the evil. So
They're two separate
they're
things.
two separate things.
They're two separate things.
yeah,
Mordeth probably carries Mashadar within him.
Right.
Because I think they mentioned.
Well,
mentions that in
no.
the story.
I think it seems like Mashadar is the result of evil having slowly
Residual,
developed there
yeah.
over time. Yes. And so I don't think when they leave, the eyes that they feel on them are Mashadar. I think it's a combination of Mordeth, because he's obviously a supernatural being. So one would think that that body is simply a manifestation that he chooses to use. It probably is what he originally started out as.
but that like fog is going through the city. Is
That's
that
Mashadar. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
Mashadar.
Mashadar.
Okay,
Moiraine
so I think that
specifically points
they're
that
one
out.
and they are together. Like whatever. It's
I don't think so. I don't think
I
so.
don't think so because
I think it exists inside of him. Though.
Right. No,
Nope,
I
don't
I
think
agree
so
with that.
either. I
agree
think
with
they're
that, Adam.
separate entities.
I think because once again, Moiraine says if he leaves, he's looking to take over someone when he leaves, and that's what they were worried about, him carrying the treasure out, and he's tainted with the evil of Shadar Logoth. And that evil of Shadar Logoth is Mashadar. So there is got to be some. I think they're
disagree.
two separate things.
I disagree. I don't think he's tainted with the evil. I think he came to the village. He came to the town. He is the source of the malignance that develops there. And Mashadar is the manifestation or the physical embodiment of the malignance. I think he can leave that place, and Mashadar can stay there, and he's just looking to bring the evil that he has with him elsewhere, that he has contained in him, but it's not Mashadar. Mashadar is a separate thing.
Mashadar seems to be a result of him.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a result of him, but it is a result of the evil that he brought, that he indwelled in that place, and it developed over time.
I don't know. That could be just two
one
separate
could even say
evils
it's a
in the
spawn of
same-
his.
Yeah.
But I don't think he carries it with him. I think that he can develop something like that elsewhere.
I think a good comparison would be Venom and Carnage.
Sure,
where
yeah.
Carnage was the offshoot of Venom,
Right, yes.
and they were two separate evils.
Right, and one can exist and move around without the other, and without bringing the other with them.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on though. So Moiraine is really worried that he either touched them or gave them some treasure.
Right.
So that seems like he can pass that. He can pass that disease off.
Yeah.
Well, no, because remember,
whatever the disease is, we don't know.
Oh, I mean,
We don't know
maybe
what's
That's what
being
it seems
passed off.
like.
It
That's
could
what
be
it seems like
his
she's
evil, or
worried
it could be
about. She's
Mashadar,
like,
and that you're right, Adam. We don't
Did
know
he touch
yet.
you? Yeah, he's like, did he touch you, or did he give you treasure? And then she goes on to mention that it could affect you. It could cause death.
Right. So I
it could
guess
cause death.
I wonder.
So
to
if
Eric's point, if Mashadar touches you, you're dead.
Right, exactly.
If he touches you, you can be
knows?
corrupted or you can be dead.
Yeah, who knows?
So we don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah. She says that Mordeth would be wearing the body of one worse than killed if he brought this person out to the edges of the city and then walked. And then
he possesses.
she said he would be remaking his havoc on the world once again. So obviously this guy is really powerful. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
Guy in quotes.
That's
Yeah.
my most interesting moment of the week.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess mine, it's kind of like yours is an extended moment. Mine has to do with Perrin, and we laugh because Perrin is like the least interesting person in many ways because he's very frustrating and he's slow and deliberate.
Well, we haven't discussed
But-
Perrin at all before, so
Yeah,
Not much.
not much. Well, that's probably for this very reason.
well, we haven't gotten very much information on him.
True. He's really good with an anvil.
And an axe, apparently. So my whole thing is his meeting Elias and the connection he has with the wolves. It's a huge development. We're seeing now with Perrin potentially some supernatural power. Rand's got this observant thing going on. There's something going on with Rand. Now we're seeing there's something going on with Perrin. And
Treasure.
this connection to the wolves and whatever that may be, his awareness of them, which he can't explain to Egwene, and just that whole meeting. I thought was a really cool moment because, like we're saying, even the little we gather with Perrin up to this point has kind of been boring. Just for lack of a better term, he just hasn't had that much going on. He talks about it, how everyone makes fun of him or deals with him because he takes time thinking things out. He doesn't speak rashly. He makes conscious decisions, and because of that, they think of him in a different way than potentially he actually is. Yeah. So that's we don't know what's going to happen with this wolf thing. That's a chapter's called Wolf Brother. But
Wolf
obviously
Brother.
there's the connection there. And that's my interesting moment. There's just it's a lot shorter than yours, Adam, but it's got a lot. I think they're going to build potentially on that because they've introduced this, and who knows what will happen now.
I would imagine, and especially all of a sudden they're just sitting around a fire with these wolves, and he's told, "Oh, the wolves know that you can talk to them."
Right. Yeah, no big deal. But by the way,
Well, no, that's the way that's introduced is really, really interesting. So Elias
It is.
Machera says that they can talk to him, and then he immediately shifts the conversation to Camelin. Right. So it's like he brings. I feel like we've got this like Hitchcockian zoom into Perrin here, who's dazed by this comment that the wolves can talk to him, and then we have this comedic cut to Elias, who's like, "Anywho, tell me about Camelin."
It reminds me in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe cartoon, where the old professor is talking to Peter, Edmund, Susan, and Lucy in the library in that cartoon, and he drops like the bombshell about the house being weird, and the camera cuts to their faces like all that moment. They all make these really strange faces like, what?
They're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And they all have these really weird, and that's that moment for Perrin, and then the comedy comes in.
Right.
And okay, how's the ice in your drink? I mean, it's just like a
it's a
non sequitur there.
It's a really weird cut. So while we're talking about Elias, we get some interesting development on him. We're starting to learn a little bit more about the Aja. Apparently he had a run-in with them because his let's call it a gift is interpreted as some sort of evil by them, and
his explanation of it though is pretty cool when he's like, no, it doesn't have to do with the power. This is something that has been around since man and wolf were
the dawn of time
born. The dawn of time.
It's been around since Middle Earth happened.
This is older than that.
Well, here's your other Lion and the Witch reference. It's like the old magic, the magic that predates even the new magic of the Aes Sedai, which we know is ancient even in and of itself. And so that's what Elias is alluding to here, is that this is like primordial magic that has possessed him really more than anything else.
He thinks of it as a possession, though?
I'm just using that as, I mean, he doesn't have control over it. That's the other thing that he makes clear, is that it's just in him, and it's not something that he chose. Right. And in fact, remember, he talks about the fact that it gets discovered by the wolves finding you. You don't find it within, you don't just all of a sudden get a hold of this power.
His explanation of the name of the leader of the wolves,
Dapple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dapple is so good.
Yeah, so cool. Like he's talking about the shadow on the water or whatever. Yeah,
that's such good writing.
Right, because you're sitting there, you're like visually thinking about it. Like it pulled me in with that totally, Adam. It pulled me, and then I'm sitting there imagining everything he's talking about, as opposed to just the name. You're thinking of all the connotations of what the name can bring up.
Well, this actually demonstrates a really good understanding of an animal mentality. It's a mentality that is a lot more sensory related versus the higher levels of cognition that human beings have. And so these creatures communicate in terms of pure sense.
Or image.
Right. Sense and image, which is just another sense. I don't mean sense as in SCENTS. I mean SENSE. Yeah. It's all sensorial. So they're communicating and they communicate in complex sensorial terms, which is really, really interesting. And I certainly hope that we're going to get more of that moving forward, because it's completely foreign, and it's something that I haven't run into in the limited fantasy reading that I've done. Even though it does feel like horror writing to a degree, this feels like a Wolfman tale. It is kind of starting out as one. We'll see where it goes from here.
It reminds me of the Native Americans when they name things, like the names of their children or their horses or what it's like image type names.
I just think it's an amazing relationship with nature. Because they're out there and they're living that. And that's what I thought was very interesting about this, is that Perrin and Egwene got so lost. They are so far away from anybody living anywhere. And they meet this guy in the wild. It is so far away from anything.
Yeah.
So you meet this guy, and then he's wearing this.
He's like Daniel Boone out there.
Squirrels. It's so crazy, and it's such good writing in the sense that it's like, oh wait, yeah, you are in the freaking wilderness.
Right.
You are so far.
You're
away
in the
from
boonies.
anything that you meet, that it's believable that you meet this guy.
Yeah, and there's going to be wolves there because there's no humans around.
Yeah. So the other interesting thing is we have another one of these delayed observation moments you realize that even though they live out in the wild, and by that I mean the Emmons Fielders, and there are talks about the winter that is lingering has been worse than previous winters, and the wolves have come down out of the mountains, you realize that Perrin, Matt, and Rand have probably only seen a wolf like once or twice, because Perrin sees Elias's eyes, and it takes him the moment that the wolves actually arrive, which is several seconds or several minutes later, to realize that, oh my gosh, that's the reason why his eyes looked weird. His eyes looked like wolves' eyes.
It was brought up that he saw his eyes, and it reminded him of something.
It reminded him of something, and he couldn't put his finger on it.
Right, but I mean, I guess that goes to, we've all been in situations where you walk into a room and something's changed in the room and you can't put your finger on what 100%. It is. It's not a lack of observance. It's just sometimes your intuition isn't, the minute you see something, you know instantly what it is. I mean, I don't think that makes you unobservant. I think it's just you notice something and it's tickling in the back of your head, and it takes something else for that trigger to spark it. We've seen that a couple times now with different characters. And I think it's actually that they are more observant than the normal person, because the normal person, Egwene sees it. She doesn't notice.
Well, it's not spoken.
Well, but remember what I'm talking about isn't lack of observation. It's actually the opposite of that. It's lack of familiarity with this specific animal in this case, and its eyes. It seems like it's something that he's seen. And remember, he's not the herder. He's not the sheep herder. He's the blacksmith.
Yeah, but they do all go out adventuring.
It's true. So perhaps this is an instance of him just, having sort of delayed cognition. The other thing that we experience through him is he is the reluctant adventurer. I think out of all of them, he is the most reluctant, because he is absolutely fearful of having any sort of supernatural talent. He, from the moment that it's suggested that that the wolves say that he can do this, he's in denial of it, even though what's really interesting is the talent goes through an escalated development even in the chapter within which this occurs. We start out with it just being suggested that he can do this, all the way to, at the end, he's sensing the wolves leaving. He's understanding wolves' names even before they're introduced to him. They're reading his thoughts. So there's a whole lot of development that goes into him. So we as readers are obviously know that he has this ability, and he's still in relatively firm denial.
I wonder what's so exciting, like in people's lives, where the ability to have some superpower wouldn't be super awesome. I mean, like, we all live normal lives. If I had some super ability given to me, it was like, I wouldn't be like, I don't want this. I'd be like, bring that on. I mean, that's like, what else in your life is far more exciting than having the ability to do that sort of stuff?
First and foremost, I'd be like, oh my goodness gracious, there are wolves sitting around me and I'm not getting eaten.
Yeah, there's that too.
This is freaking awesome. Also, they're just hanging out by a fire, which is real odd.
Right. From what all we typically know, they wouldn't like fire.
Yeah.
From every other book we've ever read, or every other whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, there are wolves around. I'd be very excited.
They're friends with this guy who looks like a wolf.
Yeah.
He also seems to be like just mentioning, wow, y'all are not going the right way.
Going to be 100 miles out of the way.
It would have taken you 100 miles to get where you're going trying to go at this point.
And then he actually develops we get a little bit of an idea of the geography outside of this realm that we're in, which is also interesting. He mentions the spine of the world and apparently the desert that lies beyond it. So what I found interesting this week is we get a little bit more development of Moiraine and how she manipulates information. So Nynaeve figures out where she and Lan are after being separated outside of Shadar Logoth, and comes upon Moiraine and Lan having a conversation about the boys. And
we're not smoking in a room.
And it becomes clear that she feels that they possess something that can stave off the end of the world. She mentions that if they aren't found, she tells Lan that if they're not found, that some sort of Armageddon could occur within 5 years. So we get a greater level of development of what the stakes are for this story than I think we've ever had before, because up to this point, we've known that the Dark One was after them. And Moiraine has always suggested that if they have something that he wants, then her goal is to simply deprive him of that. Well, that's really, really vague. And obviously, she has a little bit more specific idea of what's going on here than she's letting on.
Well, I don't know that it's vague, because remember before, she flat out says, I will destroy you, rather than letting them have you. So but we know what she'll do.
That still can be part of just a general idea of that guy wants something that you have. None of us like that guy, so I'm going to keep you from him at all costs. That just gives us an idea of the price that she's willing to pay. What we get an understanding of here is that they are tied into the end of the world. We haven't had that understanding up to this point. This is a new understanding of exactly what is at stake here, which we haven't had any insight into up to this point. So then obviously she senses that Nynaeve is there, and then Nynaeve gets into a conversation with her, and then at the end, Nynaeve brings up, all right, so you're after the boys. Give me an idea of why that is. And she doubles down on the whole, they have something that the Dark One wants, and if that can't be good. So it's our job to keep them safe and to keep them away from the Dark One, which now we know is not a full truth. And up to this point, we've talked about part of the reason why the Emond's Fielders haven't liked the Aes Sedai, or what they've cited as a reason for not liking the Aes Sedai, is the fact that they tell half-truths. That they're manipulators.
What information are we finding out that that's not true? You're alluding to something that I don't know.
No, I'm not saying that. In what case?
In the case of what is she withholding? Where
she doesn't. She does not mention Armageddon to Nynaeve whatsoever.
That to me, that's just nitpicking at hairs. Whether that's going to be.
So you and I are chasing after something that we believe can prevent Armageddon. And you ask me why we're doing it, and I tell you, well, we know that there's something bad that wants it, and so that's why we're keeping it back. And you're going to tell me that I'm not telling you a half truth.
Is it going to change the outcome?
That doesn't matter. We all want to have as much information as we can about what we're doing. Everybody,
but sometimes too much information is a bad thing, especially with Nynaeve. In the effect of what it's going to have on Nynaeve and what she needs to know. To keep away.
If you knew that Armageddon was on the horizon, most people would want to know.
Yeah, but
agreed.
Yeah,
the most important thing is we have to keep. It's not about the end result.
What we know is that people that are in power withhold information in order to prevent panic. So you can say that that's what she's doing. However, what we know from Emond's Fielders' conversations about Aes Sedai up to this point is that the Emond's Fielders feel like they are manipulative. Apparently, they're placed in places of high power where they give advice, but they also talk. Tom mentions the fact that the truth that an Aes Sedai says is not always the entire truth. And this seems to be a support of that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't agree with the importance of it, though. Just because, once again, she needs them to do things.
There's a reason why this truth is revealed here. And then she has an opportunity to tell Nynaeve what Nynaeve has overheard, and she makes a choice not to. And that feeds into.
And I guess the question is, how long? When do we know that she actually knew she was there?
But I'm not saying it has anything to do with whether she's there or not. I'm saying that we know, we as readers now know what's going on, and we see her not tell the entire truth to Nynaeve. So this supports some of the suspicion that people have about the Aes Sedai.
It's very strange that Moiraine and Nynaeve just cannot stand her. So she's definitely going to hear.
Well, she's another female authority figure.
She's going to hear the fact that she is withholding information from her and just add fuel to the fire. It seems like, even though Moiraine is like, "Thank you for making that tea for me. That's why I feel better." It seems like she's nice to her.
obviously Moiraine is far more capable of civility than Nynaeve.
She's also like what you're saying is she knows what she's doing. She will let you know.
Yes, she's
She'll
a
let
lot.
You know the information that you need to know, and
Well,
it is a big deal.
She's
Big deal for us to
completely
read.
in control of
Be
herself.
like, yeah, exactly.
All right. So now it is time for In Dreams. So it's interesting that this is probably the first time we've gone this long without talking about Rand. So let's do that now. We get another dream segment here with Rand very, very early on in these chapters that
This
we've
one's
read.
definitely different than the others. Rand's in the situation, but it's almost like you're like a third person perspective of Rand, of himself, in that it's like he's observing the other guy, that he's kind of chasing around, and we're observing him, but I almost feel like he's observing himself as opposed to being in the room and the interactions and trying to escape the room and all this sort of stuff. It's just kind of this weird little Keystone Cops chase scene. It's like he's following through this, this, I don't want to say maze, but kind of a maze, and just going through all these things.
It's a French comedy of doors.
Yeah, and then
like
finally,
Asher.
just at the end, when he's like, "Oh, it's a dream," that's when the things start happening. The mirror reflections and the spinoffs and all that sort of stuff. So it's like this whole weird little chase sequence until you get to the meat of it, and the meat of it's so short, and then he wakes up. So it was kind of a weird little dream sequence to me.
It was
Except for the stabbing himself
bizarre.
on the rose.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the most bizarre thing to come out of it is the fact that he was physically wounded.
It's like the rats.
Took place in the dream.
It's like how the rats had their bats broken. The things that are happening in
exactly.
dreams can manifest themselves in the real world.
Right. We get a sense that these dreams are dangerous.
Yeah.
Other things that we learn here is that apparently, even though we are seeing this dream for the first time, he's had this dream numerous times before. We don't know how many, but he's familiar with the layout of the area that he's in, which is new to us. We've seen him in that room. We haven't seen him in this maze of bridges before. Obviously, it's in the same location. It's in the same palace or whatever that he was in before, but it's a different area of it. He also seems to be gaining some control of this. And he seems to be more conscious of the fact that he's in a dream, and he seems to be conscious of that fact much sooner than before. And another really interesting thing is he tries to ignore his consciousness of it, because when he becomes conscious of the dream, some weird shimmering thing occurs which disorients him.
Yeah.
Which that's weird. So like that would, to me, almost speaks of like, the ability to manipulate a dream almost. Like it's something that he can't quite get his arms around and isn't totally in control of yet, but maybe somewhere down the road he starts to gain command of this dream or something.
Yeah. There's something going on there.
The other really interesting thing is that this is another area of cognition for him in the dream, is he's wondering like, hey, am I in the same dream that Matt's in? If I wander around here, can I find Matt in this dream? Is Matt in a separate dream? So now we're starting to move into like, is this a dream world, which is like a physical entity all by itself? Or are they distinct dreams which only exist within, the temporal realm of the individual dreamer themselves?
Yeah, it seems like another reality.
And we know, and Perrin references later, that he's having dreams also. So they're all having the dreams.
And then he dreams himself. He does gain enough control of the dream to remove himself from this world, and he ends up in some void, some weird dream void, which seems to be a fragmentation of realities. That's usually what mirrors signify, a hall of mirrors with an infinity mirror situation. So then we end up there. So we learn a lot of new stuff here.
It's crazy dreamland is what it is, and it seems to be expanding, and the powers over it and controlling with it. I have a feeling this is going to keep happening.
Well, it's bigger than we think, and it seems to be becoming its own separate universe.
Yeah.
Even though all we've really seen of it is this one location of Baalzamon. kingdom or this castle that within which he dwells, which he doesn't totally have control over because he's looking for Rand, and Rand can see him from his terrace or from his balcony, but Balsamon can't see him yet. So that's interesting that, even though it's Balsamon's lair and it's a dream, he can't just really be weird. Everywhere. He's not omniscient in it.
Yeah, that was very strange when he was just walking up the stairs.
Yeah.
And Rand can see him, and then all of a sudden they turn around the corner and he's there, and Balsamon was surprised.
Right. Yep.
He was acting as if he had some sort of epic grandeur about him.
Right. I fancy meeting you here.
Oh, I mean,
I know you.
All right. So let's move on from here to Tolkien in the boys' room. We've got a couple of Tolkien-esque moments here, and what these really are is foundational moments that exist throughout, most fantasy stories in some form or another, but with Tolkien being kind of the godfather of current epic fantasy, we're going to use that as a touchstone or a reference. That's what these things are. They're not specific to Tolkien. He's not the only one to have done them. In fact, he's not even the originator of a lot of these ideas. So the first one that occurs is Mordeth.
Yep.
Mordeth is an echo of Wormtongue.
Wormtongue.
Yes.
That's funny because I think of Mordeth and I don't think of Wormtongue. I think of Gollum.
He specifically spoke into a king's ear.
Oh, right. Yes. I'm talking about his current manifestation, not the past.
No, the character itself
doesn't have that much power. Gollum is a.
That may be the fact, but he can't die.
So Wormtongue is a character who is an advisor to a king, has corrupted the king to the point where the king has now become possessed by a wizard.
Yeah, I completely agree with you
and
there.
Because the king is corrupted, the whole kingdom is under a veil of evil. What we know from Moiraine's story is that Shadar Logoth was once called Eridol, and that Eridol was a neighboring city of Manetheren and was an ally to Manetheren. And then this character Mordeth showed up, and Mordeth came in and started telling half-truths to the king, and then eventually manipulated the king to the point that the entire area slowly became corrupted, and then that corruption started spreading to the point where it started attacking the civilization and led to the downfall of the civilization at the time, or at least began that downfall.
And it was a poison, and obviously that was a glorious civilization.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's similar to the destruction of the Egyptian civilization, this amazing civilization that was very modern in a lot of senses, and then very, very quickly disappeared.
Or the Aztecs.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples of it throughout time. So there are stark similarities between those two characters. And by the way, this is another one of the reasons why I think that Mashadar is actually something separate from Mordeth, because Mordeth is an entity. Now, over time, he has developed into a lot more, but Mashadar is just this unthinking, malignant evil that I think he created, and then got a lot more people involved in his, a lot more people were deceived by him, and this thing grew as a collection of all of that.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
like Facebook,
and lingers like a fog.
Instagram, and then all these other things. That's what it is.
Right.
I agree with you, but it does start with him. That's what we decided before. Yeah.
Well,
that's a whole other thing.
he creates, to my mind, he creates the environment. He creates the petri dish within which the mold grows. So that's the first one, and then the second one is the dispersion of the fellowship. And this is something that is consistently now used in fantastic tales as a plot device, where you have a group that's traveling together toward a common goal, and something occurs to break them up. And
it happened a lot in season 3 of Stranger Things.
first of all, it gets Moiraine away from some of the other characters, so now they have to figure out how to survive on their own. We're probably going to learn a lot more about this world now because we're going to have characters kind of spreading out over the geography as opposed to all being focused in one area, so the narrative can kind of bounce around. And hopefully we're going to get a little bit better feel for all these characters now too, because each of them is going to start to develop their own story. We haven't learned a whole lot about Perrin. Now, all of a sudden, because he's away from the group, we're starting to get a little bit more. We haven't gotten a whole lot of Nynaeve either up to this point, and now we're getting a whole lot of her. And
Can I just say something about Rand, though? The dude is sitting on top of a ship on the top of the mast.
Yeah. There's things going on with Rand.
Laughing. Having a jolly time. That's how it's introduced. He's just up there laughing around. And then everybody's staring at him.
It's a continuation of the fight with the White Cloaks.
He's obviously having another one of those manic episodes where he enters into some sort of euphoric state.
Also the fact he just hippity hops down. Obviously, there's something going on with him.
Obviously, the lessons from Tom are really kicking in.
Right. Yeah. all of a sudden, he's a tightrope walker. Thanks,
Gleemans can do this, boy.
I mean, I was disappointed he didn't juggle on the way down and play the flute.
Who knows if he did?
The funny thing is, like, if he hadn't had the moment of reflection that he does after he discovers Matt sitting over the dagger, which we don't know that Matt has. We don't know that Matt has stolen until that moment. And then he looks up and faints from where he's at. I mean, if that moment hadn't happened, do you think that you as a reader would have realized how extraordinary his actions were?
Well, everyone else is freaking out about it.
But I think the interesting thing about that is Rand wouldn't have either.
Well,
if no one were below reacting to him, he would have just been up there, had his good old time, and then just gone down to the bottom back onto the boat.
I disagree. It
That's
seems
like if a tree falls in the forest, can anyone hear it if there's no one around? It's kind of like if no one below had reacted, would he have known he'd done anything weird? No,
all right.
Not necessarily.
I think that there's a suggestion here that there is a moment that he is under, and that moment passes and it washes away from him, and then he realizes, oh my gosh, what did I do? Just because the same thing occurred at the end of the White Cloak incident.
Yeah. That's what Dave was saying. Yeah.
But it is interesting that, Tom and everybody is sitting there looking at him like, what are you doing?
For who knows how long?
Not only that, they were shouting at him and he couldn't hear them.
Yeah, well, right, because he's way high up there on the masthead.
I don't think it has to do with the height. It has to do with he's off in some other realm of
lost in his head.
He is standing on a plank that is really, really small.
Yeah, he's up in the crow's nest, basically.
No, we're not just.
Yeah, okay. It's not that he's so high that he can't hear them. It's the fact that he is detached from reality.
But he is way up there. He is going to hear them.
So.
He is going to hear them as just distant voices because he's on the main mast. He's on the main mast. We don't have a sense of how exactly. Well, we do have a little bit of a sense. I think they mentioned that the spray is 27 feet long.
No, they mentioned the fact that they were yelling at him for a good amount of time.
Right.
And he wasn't aware of it.
He was off in
I don't think
loopy
it had to do with the height because the boat is not that big.
Right. I mean, it's big enough where if you're not just one person, but multiple people are screaming up at you, and then Tom's climbing up and yelling at you.
Right. And he almost knocks Tom over.
Right.
Yeah.
He's clearly not there. He's off in Randland.
Can we talk about one other moment that takes place on the boat?
There was another Tolkien moment that I was bringing up earlier, and I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, okay.
The captain.
Bale.
Bale, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, you're going to want to see the joy of the world, and that's what you're going to want to discover.
Right.
That's what you're going to want to see.
As opposed to match treasures.
And then he mentions this, like, giant hand that is holding a huge globe.
Yeah.
What is that?
I want to see that.
Well, he mentions a bunch of artifacts.
He talks about the metal tower.
He talks about the bones of large monsters housed in Tanchico.
As long as the freeze on the wall.
Like dino DNA.
Right.
A dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Take some of
and
this,
and
mix
he
it with some of this.
he mentions also that he collects a few of these things also.
Yeah,
So he mentions Heartstone also, whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
So we get a
It's
little
pretty
bit
cool.
of of ancient history from him.
I like Bale.
If there's
and
another,
they pass by these giants on either side of them of the civilization.
oh,
Also,
you're
like
talking
Lord
about
of the Rings.
On the
the
boat
statues that slowly get
Yeah, the statues.
that start really ancient. Well, and then
That's
there's
a
there's
Tolkien
that
moment.
giant metal right, it is. And then there's the that metallic tower off in the distance, which obviously is something.
Treasure? There's treasure in there?
Right, there's treasure in there, which is a great segment to
no,
our
where's
Coplin
that?
of the week.
Yeah.
Which who else
Yep.
can it be other than our dear friend Matt?
See, I'm going with
Oh, I
Nynaeve.
have another one.
I'm going with Nynaeve.
All right. Well, I will start
why
out.
are you
I
going
will
with
start
Nynaeve?
out talking about Matt since I introduced him. Matt once again finds the wrong thing to do.
Yep.
First of all, they go off treasure hunting because of him. Nobody's interested in exploring the
Yep.
city for treasure other
No.
than because of the fact that Matt
Yep.
wants to. Obviously, Matt is treasure hungry. He is the reason why they go down and follow Mordeth into the bowels of that building.
Mhm.
Obviously, he steals the dagger while he's in there, even though he tries to pick nits and say, well, he didn't give it to me. Yeah, but you know that it's his treasure.
I
And
wonder,
you took
I wonder
it.
though, in that
Ew.
moment, if he had it and he was hanging on to it and he ran with it and he was so scared that he didn't think to drop it.
Knowing Matt's character, do you think that that's what
it's
happened? He
It's
took
just
it.
mentioned that Rand sees that he has it. Seems like he took it.
The other really interesting thing is that they come out. They leave, and Matt is about to admit to them that
Yes.
he took it.
He's in the act of saying it.
And something happens that he gets interrupted and he keeps it to himself.
Yeah, he does get interrupted. He's on the verge of telling them, and then something happens.
And this is the other Tolkien moment, because what is the dagger doing to him?
From what we know
Doesn't
so
seem like
far,
anything
Obviously poisoning
All of a
him.
sudden, he shut up.
Well, right, but
Just not
he's
talking.
but what we know
Which
is that
not normal.
it's a precious
Right.
moment.
while he's on the boat, he's becoming my precious. He's becoming more sullen. He's
Yep.
keeping to himself.
He's also looking at the weird dagger. He's like pulling it out and looking.
Right, and
at
petting
He's
it.
looking at his precious.
My
Yeah.
precious.
Basically.
Nice dagger.
Now,
Weird.
what I will
Okay.
say about Matt leading them astray is these two have the power to say no. They have the power to say no to
Mhm.
Matt, and they simply don't.
Yep.
So I
They're
will
very used
argue.
to it.
We're also
So-
talking about 17-year-old boys.
Yeah.
I'm going to argue that they have an element of wanting to do that as well.
Well, you can have that argument with any
Sure.
any teenager who succumbs to peer pressure.
Not everyone
know,
does, though.
No, it's having
Not
the
everyone
wild-
does,
having
but-
the wild card.
We
You have the wild card
recognize
either way,
it
so-
as a social pressure for a reason, because most people do.
He's already developed that this is what Matt does. He goes off and he has all these adventures all the time.
Well, and he
Complains
leads the
and
other two into
complains,
trouble.
and
I
he's like,
mean,
this is Matt's fault.
No-
Sure. Yeah.
Nynaeve,
They have it.
Nynaeve and
They have it.
Egwene
They're
both
just so
reference
used
the
to
Both
it.
fact
say that.
yeah.
Yeah.
that the other
Yeah.
two are pretty level-headed, and that when they get around Matt,
Are you-
they do things that they can't help themselves.
Yep.
And by the way, you don't just want to let your friend wander off into trouble either. And what we know from Rand and Perrin both, I think, is that they're pretty loyal.
They're very loyal.
Yes.
They're
I
very
think
loyal.
that's how Matt gets
Wait,
them
are
into
you-
trouble more than
so-
anything else.
Okay.
So my
Sure.
question is,
Are
The
you
co-
both agreeing on him as being your Coplin of the week?
No,
No.
Because he's not mine.
nope, he's
no,
mine.
It's not mine.
Okay.
Mine's Nynaeve, because once again, she cannot get past herself in any conversation she has with anybody.
Yeah. No,
She
sure
in
can.
the conversation with Moiraine, whether she's withholding information or not, she will not listen. She is so fixed on her own opinion of things.
Yeah.
That Maureen's trying to be pleasant. She's trying to be whatever. She's trying to have this conversation with her, and Nynaeve just will not have it. And she's just annoying with her.
agree.
She's annoying with Lan. She's annoying with everything.
She is annoying with Lamb, but she also seems like she's like kind of winking at him.
Yeah, that we're getting a little bit of that. The blushing scene she had before, and then there was something else that happened in this one. Like she was about him tracking her or whatever.
I mean, who wouldn't be into him?
But yeah, she just like the scene she has with when they get into the building in Shadar Logoth when Moraine's exhausted and she's like, hey, guess you need my help now. She's just she's so annoying, and that's why she's on my list.
I agree that she's annoying.
She has a couple of interesting moments. Remember, she comes in and she's, in her way, she is completely skeptical of whether or not the Trollocs are actually after the boys, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so what happens? She gets chased outside of the walls of Shadar Logoth, and she is being tracked down by a Trolloc. The Trolloc gets close to her, starts sniffing around, and she realizes that it sensed her and determines that she is not what it's after and goes and chases after something else. And it's in that moment that she realizes that they are in fact after something specific.
Does she realize it?
Yes, she does. She does. Yes, the inner monologue in the book actually makes it express.
My point to that is, I'm going to need more proof. I'm going to need more.
No. It says that she realizes that.
My point is, just because she says something, I'm going to see how it plays out in the future.
This is not an argument against whether or not she's annoying. These are just some observations of some of the things that occurs to her during the week.
That happens to her, though,
I think this is the greatest demonstration that we've had of the bigotry that little town of Emmons Field has towards Aes Sedai, whether it's justified or not. Yep. Despite how stubborn she is brought face to face with the fact that this power is in her.
Right.
And yet every mechanism of her cognition goes towards self-denial. And remember, she tells Moiraine, to your point, David, you were saying, like, how amazing is this? Like, you are a supernatural being. And the one thing that she wants to make perfectly clear is don't tell anyone else.
Right. Don't let
no one else can know that I'm this awful, awful, terrible thing that I hate.
Those dirty Aes Sedai schemes.
I bet that's because she's had to deal with that by being a very young healer in her town.
That goes to what I was saying earlier about Nynaeve is a control freak. And the minute that power that she has over the boys, over her charge of people in the town, because that's what she looks over. She's the wisdom. She looks over that they're her charge. The minute that's threatened by somebody else, she can't deal with it. Like no, you're obviously doing something bad, and I'm obviously doing something good. So if I'm the one doing the good, you can't possibly be doing good. It's so convoluted.
What is most annoying to me is Perrin discovers that he has this freaking amazing ability, and he's just like, no.
It's
I'm not gonna do it.
Same with Nynaeve. Yeah.
I don't want anything to do. I don't want anything to do with this.
Those Emmons Fielders.
Give me a break.
Though
one's man's trash is another man's treasure.
Let's also admit that the werewolf story, nobody in a werewolf story goes,
Spanish Inquisition.
I want to be a werewolf. I can't think of, I'm sure there is one, but I can't think of a single werewolf story.
This is not werewolf. Werewolf is a horrendous, painful transformation.
That's true, but there are definitely similarities here.
From what we have observed to this point, pretty painless. This guy, Elias, that has been hanging out with the wolves, seems to be fine. He seems to be on his own all the time, but he can still hold a conversation.
He's laughing like a loon and rolling.
Well, he does seem a little crazy.
He's
right. He doesn't seem to be.
But we don't know
fine.
We don't know if that's because of the wolves or if that's just because he's living by himself and talking to himself. So
I assume it's because he's been by himself, and we see what happens to people who are by themselves for extended periods of time.
Yeah. But I can see that, Adam. But maybe that once again because Perrin is so deliberate from what we're finding out. He's a thinker.
Yeah, he bores me.
I'm aware of that. But my point
that's why he's my conger of the week.
My point is just that it's in line. I think it's in line with his nature, which bores you.
Well, and it fits into the bigotry of Emmons Field. Like none of the whole town does not want anything out of normal.
No.
The entire crux,
except for Matt,
of the town is to keep things normal, to keep things moving forward. to keep things functioning the way that they always have, and not
Meanwhile,
have any
our
change.
crops are failing, and we're going to ignore it.
I wonder if Matt was born in the town because he's like the one that doesn't fit in like the rest of them.
Egwene doesn't
one of
either.
These three is not like the other. Yeah, it's
Egwene and Matt were hit over the head with the adventure stick.
right.
Gwen's like, yippity dee. Someone's gonna
Yippity-dee!
Oh, she's getting her adventure now. She's starving. She's not
Yep.
not
Okay.
doing so well.
And we get a sense here too with that this is Matt or Rand realizes or sees that this is the first time. There's a moment where she's not enjoying it, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think of your adventure now?"
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up here with who leveled up.
Yeah.
So I started the last one, so somebody else can go here.
I'll go because for me it's a continuation of Perrin. I mean, I'm gonna go with Perrin. I mean,
Perrin reluctantly levels up.
Right.
No, that's fine.
He doesn't.
No, I understand.
He's got a power that he doesn't want, kind of like Nynaeve. And what's gonna happen with it, we don't know. But that's a pretty huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, can you level up though if you're like suppressing it? Like if I give you points for your character and you're like, nope, not going to use them. Have you actually leveled up? If they're
he's definitely leveled up.
You have potential level up energy as opposed to kinetic level up energy.
He doesn't want to, but he's using it. He's observing the wolves.
Yeah, no, I agree with
it's
Dave.
a reluctance
and the fact
leveling.
That also, Elias is like, yeah, this doesn't happen often.
Right. Like it's literally happened what? Elias and so far that we know, Perrin.
Well, no, Elias says that he's heard of it happening to others.
Like heard of them.
Yeah.
Elias has said that he's heard of it happening to others, but he's never actually seen it manifest itself in any one individual. Okay, Adam, who you got?
I think Rand did, in the fact that
Rand the least talked about character.
Yeah,
he has the big dream sequence.
Yeah, he has this dream sequence where it seems like he has some sort of control of it, and then all of a sudden,
observance,
just on the top of a mast, having no problem doing that.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, that's pretty spectacular.
Observing Mordeth.
It just seems like he's leveling up from what he did.
Yeah,
I think he was mine last week as well.
Yeah, he was.
No, Egwene was mine last week.
He also demonstrates leadership again here. When they're face to face with Mashadar, he's the one that takes the action to back them away and head in the different direction.
And they all look to him.
Right. And then he is the one that finally takes the action to drag Matt across the boundaries of Shadar Logoth and get out and flee the Trollocs.
Rand is
so he takes initiative.
Yeah,
he's
I forgot about that at the beginning.
We're seeing a continual theme with Rand here. Rand, I get the feeling because every week he's been in this mix of discussion, and I guess maybe that's why I picked Perrin is because this is all new in Perrin land. We've not seen any of this.
Perrin is good too because Perrin, when he is with Egwene originally after they escape Shadar Logoth, he realizes that, oh, wait, I'm the one that's in charge at this point.
Yeah, very good point.
He's got leadership there also.
He leads most of the time when Egwene lets him.
The horse.
My level up for the week is Lan. It's incremental, in the same way that Rand's leveling up is in a little bit more increments, but we haven't seen Lan level up, I don't think yet. And we learn a little bit about him. We learn that
he was a babe with a sword in his hand.
The Lord of the Seven Towers.
And Moiraine says that he was pledged to fight the Dark One before he left the cradle. A sword was placed in his infant hands.
Yeah. That's a good call. That is a very good call.
I have a feeling like Lan, or rather Rand and Moiraine,
because men said that crap,
are going to be continual levelers.
It's interesting that you bring up Min, Adam, because we have one of Min's prophecies come to light here.
Yep.
Min mentions
bringing Min up.
Min mentions a wolf in association with Perrin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is the first of those prophecies that happens.
No, because Lan, she mentions that Lan. she saw that there was a babe with a sword in his hand.
Okay.
We saw one earlier too when she was talking about when she was naming some of the
Matt
things
and
about
a red eagle.
Right, Matt and the Red Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't gotten anything on yet. I don't. Oh,
No, we
well,
did.
right. We have because he's
riding
used the
down-
old tongue and the shout
Yeah.
of Menetherin. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I mean, these
last
things,
week.
I'm looking forward to more of these things
3
coming
of
to
them.
light, and hopefully they
Who
have
the
more
hell is
meaning.
Min? Where did she go?
She's gone. She gone.
She's back in Bearlawn.
That's
Right.
my question.
Oh, but
Where
she
the
made
hell
it. She
is
made it
she?
very clear that Rand cannot get away from her.
Right.
So, we will see her again.
Yeah, we've got to see
No
her again
kidding.
at some point. Well, that wraps up another lively conversation about the 6 chapters,
lively.
19 through 24. Next
Dave,
week we will.
You were lively.
Yes, it was left. in the
Next week
dark.
we will cover chapters 25 through 30.
Math.
So join us again next week when we cover the next 6 chapters. We're looking forward to having another great conversation.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.